The LSU football schedule is a perilous path of pitfalls, and today we're breaking it down. Plus, some honest insight for our little ankle biters from Ole Miss. Welcome. I'm Ruddy Rutledge, and my former co-host Arthur is now in a producer's role, where he will produce stuff and maybe chime in. He's a producer now. Okay, that's enough. LSU football has kicked off fall camp, and the Tigers have a brutal schedule this year. A meat grinder in their new coach's first season, 9 SEC games, 5 of them on the road. We'll be dissecting it all in detail in just a bit. Big opener against Clemson on a, I'm sure to be hot, Saturday night in Tiger Stadium, followed 2 weeks later by an early season road trip to Oxford, Mississippi, where GPS goes to die. Deep in the holler. But I hear the Ole Miss coach actually has it pretty nice over there. Pete lives in one of those tiny homes, those tiny luxury homes. It's on over there behind that very last Dollar General. Nothing but the finest for the adult version of Chunk from the Goonies. The only SEC football head coach in history who smells like Maverick menthols and pickled pig's feet. But I shall not digress further. The LSU football Tigers are hard at work at the McClendon practice facility, aka Saban Land, where it's hot, I'm sure. The national media is hot for Lane Kiffin's Tigers in 2026. A lot of talk of this team getting into the playoff and competing for a national title in Kiffin's first run as Tigers head coach. By the way, this is that same head coach. This is the same head coach who, if you listened to that same national media 6 months ago, he was an evil scumbag with no moral compass. But at SEC Media Days, where he showed up in person, he was a superstar. The superstar. A powerful offensive sorcerer who can light defenses on fire with his thoughts. And the sorcerer put together an accomplished staff of apprentices. And he brought Dirk Diggler with him to call dirty, nasty ball plays, and he brought back Blake Baker to run a hard-hitting defense. And then the new LSU staff assembled a war machine for a roster, weapons on offense, playmakers on defense, NFL, height, weight, speed, everywhere. It's what they say. It's what the practice reports say. And they're going to need all hands on deck to survive this schedule and get into that college football playoff. And that is our focus for today, the navigation of the 2026 LSU football schedule. The schedule shapes the season like a blueprint. Before a single snap is played, the schedule has already affected things. It's college football's puppet master. And this schedule is out for blood, Tiger blood. And I don't care what anybody at ESPN or anywhere else ranks it, it's a gauntlet. The last month alone by itself is a gauntlet. November. Good thing Lane is experienced navigating difficult SEC schedules. Little more pressure here, though, where co-divisional titles are not celebrated. So when we look at this schedule with, again, 9 SEC games now, I want to call extra attention to the pivotal games that could define the Tigers' season. More so than on the big, sexy games everybody's talking about now. Those really huge games, and there are 3 or 4 of them this season, in my view, they might be the games you circle on the schedule, but it's those pivotal games, the swing games, that make or break the season. These are good teams that may not be marked on the schedule, but when game week rolls around for that team, it's suddenly a huge game. LSU has 4 of these games. And remember, mostly new coaching staff, mostly new players, so this team's likely going to be more in sync, hitting its stride more in the second half of the season than at the beginning. Possibly more of a defensive team at first, but if that Kiffin offense comes out in a rhythm right out of the gate with quarterback Sam Levitt, buckle up. So let's get into it, and we're not making predictions today, not yet. Not till a little more intel comes out on all these teams. But the first game is right around the corner. September 5th, Clemson is one of those huge games you circle when the schedule first comes out. And it's not because Dabo has this world-beater squad, but it's Lane Kiffin's first game as LSU Tigers coach, and it's in Death Valley at night. Next week, week 2. Next game, week 2, Louisiana Tech. Now, Tech is not exactly a cupcake. They played LSU tough last year, but I'm expecting more than 23 points from the Tigers this go-round, based solely on the concept of addition by subtraction. Next game is not like the others. It's not like any game in college football this year. Maybe the biggest game in Ole Miss football history. Armageddon is September 19th at night in their little fun-sized stadium. And I want to point this out. This game and all that goes along with it, it's going to take a lot out of this LSU squad mentally and physically. And just a week later, the Tigers get Texas A&M. And this is the first of our 4 pivotal swing games on this schedule, the games that will define the season. The Aggies haven't won a national title since penicillin came out, since the Slinky was invented, and their head coach, Mike Elko, always looks like he's holding in a turd. But they've bludgeoned LSU 2 years in a row, and A&M is bringing another heavy-hitting squad to Tiger Stadium. Good secondary, very good wide receivers, and quarterback Marcel Reed says he doesn't lose to LSU. And this game marks the first potential little hurdle for this coaching staff to manage. This A&M game is not a must-win if LSU can win at Ole Miss. But if the Tigers come up short in Oxford, they really can't afford to lose this one too, to the Aggies at home. Next, October 3rd, McNeese, Cupcake. Then in week 6, a trip to Kentucky. Very intriguing game here. Could call it a trap game, not because of the next week's game, but because Kentucky will be better than a lot of people think. They replaced Mark Stoops, finally, with Will Stein, talented young offensive coach, and he's not even old enough to call Unc, but he worked the portal really well. Brought in some talent on the fly. Next is State in Tiger Stadium, and I'm glad they're back on the schedule. This one should be over early. But either way, nobody should have to put up with cowbells ringing for 3.5 hours. Not the TV viewing audience, no one. Next is the second of our pivotal games that will define the season at Auburn, October 24th. And I can't lie, this game scares me. Auburn might have made the second best coaching hire of this last cycle in Alex Golish from South Florida. And Alex brought with him his very impressive quarterback, Byram Brown, who accounted for 92 total touchdowns for the Bulls in 3 seasons, 42 last year, passing and rushing combined, 1,000-yard rusher. And if you've been to the Plains and been inside Jordan-Hare Stadium, you know how loud it can get. Incredibly tough place to go in and win. After that is LSU's traditional open date on Halloween weekend, followed by another pivotal game, another season-defining game that the Tigers frankly need to win. They can afford a loss or two, sure. But this November home game, coming off a bye, does not need to be one of them. It's Alabama versus LSU, November 7th. And you could circle this game too, sure, as one of the huge ones. Not long ago, it was the game of the year in the SEC, but in 2026, Bama is no longer a dynasty. They are a very good football team. And Kalen DeBoer may dress like he's here to pump the septic tank, but he's 2-0 against the Tigers. Now, by this point in the season, November, that new car smell, the new coaching staff and new players' narrative, that will have long worn off. And this team, the 2026 LSU Tigers, need to have their own identity. They need to be hitting their stride by this point, clicking on all cylinders, all the cliches. Because 6 days after the doorknob hits Bama in their big badonkadonk on the way out, the Texas Longhorns come calling Baton Rouge for the first time since 1953. This will be an electric environment in Death Valley. It's going to be all right. Definitely one of those huge games you circle when the schedule comes out. You have the Kiffin versus Sarkisian head coaching matchup. First time in the SEC. Petey Carroll and Norm Chow will be watching from afar, I'm sure. And Texas is a popular pick to win the league. They're going to be top 5 starting out. And their quarterback's family has just a little bit of history in Tiger Stadium and in Louisiana. And just 1 week later, after playing Bama and Texas back-to-back, I'm telling you, the schedule is relentless. LSU packs up and travels to Big Tennessee for another pivotal season-defining game, potentially. November 21st. In front of 100,000 plus Cletuses and Jethros and Skeeters and maybe Lulu and Junior too. The thing is, the Vols coach, Josh Heupel, the living embodiment of Bobby from King of the Hill, he has encouraged his fans to buy up all the mustard bottles and golf balls for this game to throw at Lane Kiffin's dome. Awesome. Imagine if Lane said something like that. Everybody fill up your piss balloons to throw at Reese Davis and Pat McAfee. But talent-wise, LSU's better than Tennessee and should win this game. And then Josh can crawl back onto the short bus with his Garfield lunchbox and get back to playing buddin' with his little toy trucks. Another thing to consider navigating this SEC schedule is not just a mental thing. When LSU plays Bama and Texas and Tennessee back to back in November, the Tigers better be able to line up and run the football and stop the run. That's the simplest way to win in November and December and January. What will their conditioning be like at this point in the season? Their physical strength, their toughness, that's got to be there in the late stages of the season. The lather will be very interesting to watch it all go down. Just like Diana Rossini at a coaches convention. Finally, you get Arkansas to close out the season on the road again in Fayetteville in a game that might be important for the Tigers if they've got a playoff spot to lose or an SEC title game to play in the week after. Kiffin and his staff did a good job of this last season at Ole Miss, maintaining focus as they navigated an SEC schedule. And if they need extra motivation for this one, there's always the boot. So shiny and big and shiny. Now, for the life of me, I don't know how anybody can go through this schedule and call it easy or even favorable for LSU. But some people have. And yes, the Tigers can afford to lose a game early in the season when they are still finding their footing to either Ole Miss or A&M. But it's all about making that playoff, and you really don't need to lose to both of them because that leaves you no room for error the rest of the way, and it's a long rest of the way. And LSU can lose a second game later in the season. But remember, you have Bama, Texas, and Tennessee back to back to back, so the Tigers don't need to slip up at Auburn or at Kentucky or at Arkansas. Maybe LSU should just put a big old circle around this whole schedule. Just circle the entire thing. Fall camp is here, and that is awesome. But those practice reports can get old quickly. And to close this show today, I was planning a nice little off-season special teams segment. But I kept feeling this pull to do this instead. So, after first going to the media and making this a public issue first, the scorned Ole Miss administration, led by its cheese-headed athletic director, has followed through on its earlier threats and filed a lawsuit against a couple of LSU football players who decided to leave Oxford and stay aboard the Lane train. Now, I'm not getting into the specifics on this. Seems like the sports writers have litigated the case anyway, already. And all the brilliant authors around Oxford are already writing their thrilling novels about this, I'm sure. Maybe they'll sprinkle in some unfunny comedy. But the plaintiff clearly made this public first, only to try and dunk on Lane and LSU and those players. Publicly. And that makes Ole Miss look so petty and so small. Like runts. New football season is almost here, and they are still not over it. And the hardest part for them, I think, is the why. Why did he leave us for them? Why? Well, I think I can help with that. I like to help. So, before Coach Kiffin of LSU returns to Oxford in just a few weeks, I'd like to provide some of the missing data Ole Miss apparently needs. The why. Y'all ever eat at the why? So here's 5 minutes, give or take. Think I can wrap it up in 5 on why Lane Kiffin left Ole Miss for the LSU. Plus some other ranting. Because Louisiana Saturday night, Death Valley, the lore, the tradition, the LSU fan base, the Louisiana talent base, the resources, all superior. Anybody that can think clearly knows that. But also, Lane slowly figured Ole Miss out. He eventually pulled off all their masks and truly saw them. For example, he learned that 2/3 of the Ole Miss fan base likes to use drugs before they post on X. Okay, no problem. But then he realized that once the buzz wears off, that entire institution still sees itself as a pipsqueak runt football program of frustrated little ankle biters. And that was off-putting to him. This deal's kind of like back on Saved by the Bell. Kind of, sort of. When Kelly and Zach made a cute little couple, but then Jeff came along with more to offer, and Kelly had to leave Zach for Jeff. Well, in this case, Jeff has an 800-pound jungle cat in the backseat of his fighter jet. He's got a 100,000-seat coliseum with dancing golden girls and flying cups of whiskey and the most rabid fans in the sport. High school you had no shot. 4 more minutes of this. I don't hate Ole Miss, but, and I mean this with utmost respect, but it seems like God hates Ole Miss. Sorry, Rebels. And yes, you've won some championships. Sure, that's more than Mississippi State can say. And you've won one since Aggie last did it. But then again, so has Army. And from Lane's perspective, one school has 0 Heisman winners, the other has 3. One program has 6 SEC titles, the other has 12. Louisiana State holds the all-time series lead, not only in head-to-head matchups, but in games played in Oxford. And the Tigers have won 7 of the last 10. LSU has crushed Ole Miss dreams time and time again. Recently, times when the Rebels had good teams, but they choked on that Tiger, and it cost them. 2003, 2014, 2024. Ole Miss is the ultimate little bro. Lane recognized that, and he left. 3 more minutes. And that litigious Ole Miss administration certainly didn't help their chances of keeping him. Lane has to feel really good now about his decision after seeing who they decided to replace him with. And you know what? I'm not even going for that low-hanging fruit. I'm not going to say the Ole Miss football coach has done bath salts or kratom. None of that. Not going to get sidetracked and go there. Wait a minute. Yes, I am. They hired Pete Golding. Media loves some Pete, though. Pete was killing it at the press conference. Oh, he's so likable. Knowing good and damn well the only thing he's killing is Miller High Life and Flamin' Hot Cheetos. And he appears to generally be more of a lost cause as a person than the 15 other SEC head coaches. It does kind of suck that Pete is catching strays today, though. He didn't sue anybody. And I can't really rip on Pete's coaching acumen much, at least not on defense. He learned under Saban, learned under the GOAT, and was chased away with a stick by the GOAT. Speaking of chasing somebody off, Ole Miss fan base, you heavily contributed to the Kiffin affair. And that fan base can be divided into groups, subcats. Lane couldn't stand a lot of them and ultimately had to get away from all of them. Of course, you have your typical mouth breathers, your stutterers that like to sit around and fantasize about running water. These people taste the gas before they put it in their vehicle, and they straight up run North Mississippi like a mob of Cro-Magnon meth moguls. And not all the old Mississippians are bumpkins who crawled out from underneath the double wide. Oh no, you have your students, your scholars, your future Oxford novelists, and they had to be begged by Lane Kiffin to attend football games. The majority of his time there, not a job requirement at Kiffin's new position. Then you have your wealthy Ole Miss supporters, the donors, and these are the people who hate the letters LSU the most, that think they're better than you because they've seen the inside of William Faulkner's old shithouse, or they've met John Grisham at a Little League baseball game, or they met John Grisham inside William Faulkner's shithouse. And now they are furiously pumping NIL cash into that runt football program, but it ain't going to work because they hired Cooter from Dukes of Hazzard to run the thing. Hopefully some of that helps. Doesn't everyone feel better now? I love Mississippi. I was born there. I'm just trying to be of service. Ole Miss football is, well, I will say it's in unbelievable hands. And so is LSU. But in a way that's just different. Thanks for watching. I really appreciate your time. Please like and please subscribe. For Arthur the Party Dog, I'm Ruddy Rutledge, and this is some Bayou Football.